Great. Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, March 20th. We're here in Vermont Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs Committee. And we have the pleasure of launching the day with our Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery, Wendy Knight. And we are getting updated on and being prepared for what's coming to us from the House, which is the Liquor and Lottery Miscellaneous Bill.
Yes, but I'm not here to talk about the
Oh,
bill.
you're not?
No, I'm here to report on our reports.
Okay,
So
great.
yes,
But welcome. We
I-
have not, that would be great. Report on your report.
a report on my report. So
That is
this is
terrific.
meant to be an overview. For the record, my name is Wendy Knight, Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. Nice to see you all. So what I thought I would do is give a quick overview of each report, and then I will pause for questions before I move on to the next report, if that's okay.
That
And
sounds perfect.
Skylar Janest is our Senior Director of Licensing Operations and our Chief, and he is going to run you through the tobacco compliance report and our direct-to-consumer shipping compliance pilot report.
Great.
I am done.
And we'd love an update on our sports
Yes,
betting
and that's
revenue,
part
which is
of,
rocking.
yes, that is part of what I will talk with you about. So our annual report, and we can definitely give you, you were sent a
Do we
link
have
to that.
copies?
Yeah.
Do
We can give you hard
I put
copies.
it online, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to print it out.
Is it lengthy?
Yeah, it's 35.
Oh, then pages, just access it online.
Yeah.
Listen to you.
I'll just give you a quick summary. This is the annual report that the department puts out every year. So to remind the thing, the committee.
Thank you, Charles.
So we have a dual mission, commerce, obviously, we run businesses and we generate income for the revenue for the education fund and the general fund. And then we also have a very important public safety mission. Our liquor control sales, obviously as a control state, we're responsible for selling distilled spirits. FY 23, we had 103 million in sales. That was a 2.1% increase from the previous fiscal. Total revenue was 104 million because we collect fees, and we transferred 20.5 million to the general fund in a direct application, and the total contribution to the general fund from liquor control was $32 million. That includes excise tax and the sales tax, sales and use tax.
And that's up.
That is up from the previous year. So this is FY 23 numbers I'm reporting on. I'm gonna pause for a second and tell you what's happening now, because as of July, the beginning of FY 24, sales nationally in liquor are trending down. They're trending down about 2 or 3%. We are seeing that as well. We saw a decline, obviously, in July because our stores were impacted. So some of our stores were closed. We have those that are, some are reopened.
Those are the
Montpelier.
flooding.
Right,
Just-
right. So some of the reasons why you're seeing a decline in liquor sales is because people are consuming less alcohol. In states, and this is nationally, and we're seeing that in Vermont, in states that have legalized marijuana, younger generations are opting to consume cannabis instead of alcohol. Younger generations are drinking less, they're being more intentional about consuming alcohol.
Education is working.
I
And it's very healthy.
Good.
I think it's a healthy development. And also the growth of non-alcoholic beverages is one of the fastest growing categories. So
Mocktails.
correct. And not only that, but the quality of non-alcoholic products has improved dramatically. Years ago, you just had, old duels, for example, and now you have craft brewers that are making non-alcoholic beer. So good development all the way around. It just means we as a state need to understand that we're going to be getting less money from alcohol sales if we see that trend continuing. So just saying that right there. On the lottery side, we're doing well. We had our conversion for a new lottery vendor. They have more self-serve vending machines. lots more player enhancements, so the lottery sales are doing well. We had 159 million in revenue in FY 23. And we contributed 33.5 million to the ed fund. Now,
That's up too,
that's up as well, correct? Now,
which is, it's not up 200 billion you need, but it's
No,
certainly.
and people think that, because we promote the fact that our revenue from lottery, profits from the lottery go to the ed fund. But our contribution to the ed fund is less than 2%. We are not funding exclusively the ed fund, and you all know that, but not everybody else knows that.
Well, you're funding the prizes, you're funding the administration, you're funding.
Right.
But the profit, other than funding the operation and the prizes, is going pretty much exclusively to the ed fund.
Exclusively to the ed fund.
So
Yes.
I think that's the way we have to frame it.
$33.5 million.
It's not a major contributor.
That's all I'm saying.
Hey,
It's better than nothing.
it is.
Thank you. So, this
They
is
would have paid for all the universal school meals. That alone.
yes. So a couple other things, we are very focused on fundamentals this year. We don't have a big legislative priority. It's the miscellaneous alcohol bill. So we're focusing on running businesses and being, making sure that we're increasing revenue when we can, monitoring cost containment, and doing things efficiently and with innovation. And that's what we do, is running businesses. This is the first year we have launched a benchmark satisfaction survey. We have a number of
As
customers.
opposed to just satisfaction.
Well, it's our first, so we call it a benchmark.
So it sets the standard.
It sets the standard.
Yeah, okay.
So we have seen across our customer groups, so we have 802 Spirits customers, 802 Spirit stores, Vermont Lottery customers, Vermont Lottery agents, we have our liquor suppliers and brokers, and we have our licensees. So we saw more or less 85% had some level of satisfaction.
That's great.
The overall, not bad for a
It's not
government
100%,
agency.
but it's pretty,
No,
it's better than.
Right, so when you look at the overall satisfaction rate, it's about 68%, so
Wow.
plenty of room for improvement. But as Charles likes to point out, if you're a government agency, or a politician for that matter, 68% is pretty good.
I like the 85%.
Yeah, well, to some degree, 85% of our customers have, some level of satisfaction with us. So we're using that as a way to, dig in and understand what the issues are, how we can improve that.
Do you have a sense, Wendy and Charles, do you have a sense of where the key areas are for improvement?
Oh, yeah, we asked 6 core questions, and now our action plan is to have follow-up stakeholder meetings, which we do on a quarterly basis. So we finding out where we can improve some of the questions, actually the prompt and courteous, where we prompt and courteous got the highest score, so that's good. So we just need to look at.
So the
Sometimes-
public interface.
Correct. These are all with our, we call them customer groups. So sometimes, for example, 802 Spirits customers, they think we don't have a good selection, or they don't like, we don't carry XYZ. And so some of it is just a function of being in a control state. And so anyway, we're digging into that. We take that really seriously. Part of the way you are able to deliver excellent customer service is by having engaged and satisfied employees. So we've been focusing on that a lot in terms of our employee engagement survey. We increased participation in 1 year from 46% to 84%. So we did a real campaign internally to say your opinion matters. How can we make this a good place to work? So that's just something we've been focusing on, and we've
That's great.
improved our employee engagement score considerably. Went from 2.61%, or I'm sorry, 2.61. It's not a percent, just score.
Out of
Uh,
5 or 10.
no, it's out of I'll have to get you to what the.
Yeah.
So ours, we went to 4.0.
The doubling.
We,
But that's great.
yeah, so we're focusing on employee engagement.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Is, that's something that maybe that could be a model for the rest of the state is the employee engagement. Did you work with the
The
HR
Did you work
folks
with Beth on that?
generally or?
Yeah, so HR puts out the report. in our department, you know, we encourage people to participate. One of the things that we do, and because we're a small agency, we can do this, is Deputy Commissioner Andrew Collier and I, after the employee engagement surveys come out and everyone gets the general, here's where we are, here's how we scored, we have those group meetings, we do it with our managers, and then we meet with all of the employees and we present that. We meet individually with all the employee groups without their supervisors, and we seek direct feedback from them.
Oh, that's
And we
great.
understand what's working, what's not working, what are you getting from your supervisor, what aren't you getting? And then we do a list of kind of takeaways, trends, here's what we're hearing, and then we implement changes.
Is that in this whole employee engagement?
No,
Is that-
we just released that, so.
Would you
that's-
send that to us?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I
great.
will.
So is that-
That's terrific.
And it sounds like it's already statewide?
What
Well,
is it like?
do all of the employees in this,
Yes, they're
Yes.
all, yes,
they're all surveyed,
correct.
and then you do these extra things with your.
We do these
employees.
extra things with our employees. And
Alright.
part of it is because we have 80 employees. I don't have 600 employees.
Right.
So I can actually go and meet
Right.
everybody.
That's-
So it's important.
I'm sure they care a lot.
Yeah,
Even if, generally, even if employees are unhappy, being asked makes them happier.
Right,
Because they want to know that you know.
correct. They want to feel heard
Yes,
and valued.
yes.
Yes, absolutely. So we did the online licensing portal, which you'll find in the annual report. We went from 6 to 8 weeks for start to finish to issue a license to 6 days. I mentioned that our Scientific Games, our new lottery vendor, that was a successful conversion. Then we have 125 what they call PlayStations, the vending machines in the lottery agents, and we're seeing that Fast Play is one of the highest growing games, and I can follow up with all these details, just trying to give you.
Wendy,
Yes.
if you could send us the actual dollar amounts for all for this, in this report, that'd be great. They're not really here. I mean, they're just charts, but they're attractive, but they aren't.
You need
Actual dollar.
your dollar amounts for what I just mentioned?
Yeah, for the whole thing you've just said. I mean,
Yeah, it's the 103 million, all that's there.
it's actually doesn't
Yes,
say that.
it's in a narrative.
Okay, great.
It's in a narrative. So, obviously, sports wagering, we launched sports wagering. So part of what you're seeing in that annual report, that's an FY 23 report. So
Right.
what I'm giving you now is not just an overview of the FY 23 annual report, but also talking a little bit about FY 24, right? Talk about the sales and on the liquor side. We launched sports wagering January 11th. Obviously, we have 3 operators, FanDuel, DraftKings, and Fanatics. So we have monthly reports that we put now on the website that capture the activity and the revenue. So in January, of course, we launched the weekend of the playoffs, so we saw significant activity. There's a lot of pent up demand. One of the things that we found is that 40% of the active users are out of state. Okay.
What? I know that was amazing.
Yes, so the initial report that I emailed, just a snapshot, had some test accounts. So we revised our January report, and that's what's online, and that's what I'm talking about here.
So-
So the total handle, that's the total amount that was $19.9 million, so almost $20 million.
In January.
In January. Now, remember, the payouts are significant, so you have, that's the amount of, that people are betting, and then the amount of payouts is 15.7 million. So our adjusted gross wagering revenue, that's what we split with the operators, was $3.5 million. We'll send you the reports, I'm summarizing.
That's our total net revenue to Vermont.
No, that is the adjusted gross sports wagering revenue. So that is what we split with the operators, and our share of that is in January with $1.1 million. We're seeing similar activity in February. So in January, we saw that the out-of-state users were 40%, the amount wagered from out-of-state was 35%. In February, we see that there was, now remember, the Super Bowl happened in February too, so we have 21.2 million total wagered. And the payout was 18.7. So the adjusted gross sports wagering revenue was a little bit less because there was a lot more payout. And part of that was because they went into overtime in the Super Bowl and the odds are much higher. So anyone that was wagering, saying that there was going to be an overtime, made money. So the revenue share in February was 731,874. So our share, our revenue share, with the operators, we have 33% with FanDuel, 31% with DraftKings, and 31% with Fanatics. Now, as I pointed this out in the email, had you all agreed with what the industry wanted the state to do, which was to put 20% in statute, I would be reporting on much
A lot
less
less,
money, a lot less revenue. So,
Well negotiated with
well, you all,
you. We supported you.
you all
But-
did that, so thank you. So not surprising, the number one sport wagered on in January was football. That really drives a lot of the sports wagering activity is football. We see that now in February, that's dropped down to number 2. Number 1 is basketball, and that's college and NBA heating up right
College
now.
too.
Yeah, so
Oh
that's
my God, yeah.
basketball. That's the number 1 sport right now. Tennis is number 2, interestingly enough,
Generally.
in February.
Oh,
Yeah, the Australian Open.
All the Australian Open started, yeah.
It's all the, most of the month.
all the opens are starting.
Yep. So we're still seeing, that split. In February, we saw 41% of the users are out of state and
So can we just
Yeah.
pause on that for a second?
yes,
So
yes.
out of state users,
yes,
does that mean we have skiers or
Yeah.
seasonal residents fear betting?
yes, all of the above. It's people that live in other states and they're coming to Vermont for whatever reason, to ski, to stay at their second home, to visit family, and they are wagering in Vermont and we are capturing that revenue.
All of whom have time and money.
So those are, and that's what you discussed before we
Yeah.
adopted it, that
Yeah.
you would like,
Correct.
maybe, especially people from New York.
Correct. So one of the things that one of the reasons why we were able to modify and increase our projection of revenue is because when JFO did their initial revenue projections, it's just kind of theoretical, right? They don't really have the actual information. And then we got the information in the bids from the operators that they saw Vermont as being a worthy market, right? That they saw a lot more potential in Vermont. And I think one of the reasons is because we have a lot of second homeowners. We have a lot of people that vacation here and they are high net worth individuals. And so we are picking it, we are the beneficiaries of that activity. So this is something that will continue to monitor, the out of state activity. Interestingly enough, the solar eclipse we've all been hearing about is April 8th. That is also the final of the men's March Madness.
Oh, interesting.
So I will be really interested to see if the people that are coming here for the solar eclipse weekend are also sports wagers. Because then if they're here and they are betting on March Madness, then we would.
We would
the
benefit
revenue-
from that.
we would
Is
get-
anyone wagering on whether or not we'll see the eclipse because it would be cloudy?
No, though.
I bet they
are, but not in
Not in
sports.
this, thank you, yes, thank
People are
you.
betting.
They are
Yeah,
betting,
yeah.
are you kidding? Those London bookies are
Right.
making a fortune.
So we don't allow that in our online sports wagering. We only allow,
Deer polls, no.
no, we only allow, the game
Sports.
active sporting events, yes.
Somebody is.
So,
It's a what one considers a sporting event, of course. There are a lot of things that, anyway. Another subject.
so, yes.
So that's very interesting. So
So-
we are really benefiting,
From our out-of-state tourism.
yeah.
Yes,
in
we
this
are.
One area.
We, one of the, heat maps we have shows that in the first week post-launch, 5 of the 10 cities that saw the, some activity were ski towns. So another confirmation that people are, skiers are placing bets and people are coming to their second homes and stuff.
Yeah, and
So,
do you want to say something?
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
once you get off the slopes
Right.
and send her out.
so for the first
busy.
January, February, first 7 weeks, our revenue is, for the state is almost $2 million
Since launch,
since launch. Correct. 1.9 million.
that's great.
Okay,
And what did we, because that's ahead of projections.
yes, I started to say that, sorry.
Sorry.
So the JFO initially said that FY 24 projection would be 2.1 million, and that was,
For the whole year.
total, no, it was, FY
FY
24.
24, right.
So it was
So we haven't
January to
finished 24
July,
yet, so we're ahead.
correct, so we're ahead.
I know we may have a quorum problem. I have to testify in the House in,
We definitely have a quorum problem. Can you wait until when we get Wendy back? Can we get? We text Wendy, do we know where Wendy went?
I do not.
Sorry, let me just
It's
take,
okay.
we take one pause to
No
get,
problem.
you know what, just
Also,
to,
that Senator Rumpensdale just left Natural Resources, so she might be gone for the thing.
my Valerie, you just put your head into the lounge and see if Wendy's there and let's grab her. Randy, can you wait a second? Thanks. Sorry. to
It's
interrupt.
okay, it's
You're on such a roll.
This is crossover week and a lot of it is. Okay.
We're collecting,
Like,
we're
maybe
coming
to talk about their bills.
I know you're all very busy. I can come back another time.
This is great. Let's
Okay,
keep going.
okay,
This is
all right.
terrific.
Do you want me to keep talking or should I?
Yes,
Okay,
we have a
so
quorum until.
status of
for 2 more
responsible gaming
Senator
program.
Rumpensdale will be here in 1 second.
We have a partnership with the Department of Mental Health to do responsible gaming. Remember?
And what has happened with that? Have you guys?
So we were combining Vermont Lottery and sports wagering, so it's a holistic approach to responsible gaming. It's a partnership that we do. We have the Vermont Gaming Hotline, so whether you're a lottery player or you're a sports wager, you can call the hotline.
How is,
or-
do we know how many people have access?
So far, we've had 13 people call the helpline. So that's good, because there's a lot more awareness of it, it's all the operators' apps. We're doing a lot more awareness of it, there's a lot more talk about it, the ads, et cetera. So that they have access to immediate counselor there, and then they can be referred for therapeutic resources.
And I mean, at some point, it would be just interesting to track what happens with those.
Yes, so I don't have that. Hi,
Randy,
how are
how are
you?
Good, I got.
Way
It's
later.
okay.
That's okay, we have been working away.
I don't have a breakdown, they haven't been able to capture.
No, it just
Those
would be-
13 people, how many of them got referred for services? How many of them are calling about Vermont Lottery? How many are calling about sports?
How many
I
really
don't
don't help,
have that.
and did they get help?
Exactly.
I think that's
We
the
will
key
be,
thing, we need to.
hi,
Hi.
running through the reports here.
Which is great.
So, we have a counselor therapeutic resource network, that was part of the funding, it says they're building that out. We have a voluntary self-exclusion list that players can sign up for, and that's the department, our job, Department of Liquor and Lottery.
Janet Dyer.
We only had one person sign up for that so far. What we do is then we connect with the Department of Mental Health, connect that person to the Department of Mental Health for therapeutic services. If you're signing up for a voluntary self-exclusion list, obviously, we think that that's an opportunity to give you resources. We'll definitely have more to report, but the program is going really well. March is problem gambling awareness month.
Oh,
We've been, yes, it is. So we've been doing a lot of both the Department of Liquor and Lottery running an advertising campaign, and the Department of Mental Health, we've been really using that as an
That's great.
opportunity. Yes, to talk about problem gambling and how to identify it, and then how to get resources if you think you have an issue.
All good.
For a second, fantasy sports contest. Okay, so we were charged with giving a report to you all and House Government Operations. It's a very light report because we were really busy setting up sports wagering. So we're going to, make this a little bit more robust. Basically, there is a fantasy sports is currently allowed in the state of Vermont. There are 12 active fantasy sports operators. There is a distinct definition of fantasy sports that make it different from sports wagering.
Right.
All prizes, well, I don't know, should I read this to you? It's basically, it's in the report.
It's in
a
the-
very- Listen, we're gonna have more details on this.
Right, it
report.
sounds like it's
just a
not-
summary. We haven't had time to really evaluate. The questions that we will come back to is what regulatory and enforcement trends are occurring in other jurisdictions to see
yeah.
about what's happening in fantasy sports. What differentiates fantasy sports contests from online sports wagering? There is that definition that make it distinct.
What needs to be regulated? and
Right,
what
what similarities exist and what lessons can we learn? So we'll come back to the committees and have a
And-
more detailed report on fantasy sports.
And when we expecting that next January or earlier?
Well, I did tell House Government Office we would have something by the end of this session.
Oh.
I know the idea was to contemplate doing something, but what I have been suggesting is that we actually wait until next.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Sports wagering is going fine. Let it make money and let it make people safe. And we will discover after a year of this, any tweaks we need to make, if any.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
we
better.
will use our data. Let's use data-driven.
Let's do one thing a year.
Let's do one thing at a time. Okay, so I'm gonna pause because we have two other compliance reports that Skylar can briefly review with you.
Well, that would be good. Hi,
Okay.
Skylar, welcome.
Which are the two that are left?
They are the direct-to-consumer shipping pilot compliance program, and I'd like Skylar to start there. And then
Right.
the other one is the tobacco compliance testing results that we do every year.
Okay.
So the first one is something we got funded from the National NABCA, National Association of Beverage Control. I said it wrong. It's a trade association
Right.
that controls states. And that's something we specifically sought to look at, and that's.
Right, before we actually regulate further, before we take back more action on
Correct.
direct.
It's meant to inform you all and the public and us frankly of what that.
Oh, great.
And so just, sorry to jump in, but to do.
Yeah, my ears are back, so welcome back.
We finished this at 10. Is that right? Yes.
So we finished this at 10, we're gonna hear these two reports. We'd probably also like to spend 5 or so minutes on getting your interpretation of what's coming from the House and how you
Right, she,
feel about that.
well, she updated us on their reports.
Right, right.
Yeah,
But
yes, we can do that.
Okay.
Skylar or Charles can do that. I
Okay.
haven't been,
well,
Okay. And if it hasn't been said, we appreciate how high functioning your department has been, given that you have a key staff member who's also been pulled into flood activities. So.
this department can chew gum and walk, sing and do all sorts of other.
Charles and
things.
Skylar are amazing. We are very lucky to have them in state government and I am very lucky that they work with me at the department.
Thank you both. Thank you, Skylar. Okay. So we are where we are. So Madam Chair, it's back to you.
And just Skylar.
And Ms. Scott, said.
Okay, well, thank you, members of the committee. Thank you, Commissioner, for such kind words. For the record, my name is Skylar Janest. I'm the Senior Director of Licensee Operations for the Vermont Department of Liquor and Lottery. The two reports I'll talk to today, direct to consumer, I'll start there. This was a program that the department really proactively wanted to know just more about how it was impacting the regulatory landscape within the state of Vermont. Obviously, online sales of products have exploded, and that is actually the expectation of consumers now, is that they first go online to see where they can source their products, and beverage alcohol is not excluded in that. The unfortunate component of this is that the department really didn't have good insights into how often that occurs in the state of Vermont, and two, how closely do the sellers and shippers conform to existing regulations relative to direct to consumer. Just to orient the committee, we do lawfully allow some direct to consumer shipping within the state of Vermont. It's primarily limited to malt and vinous products alone. We issue licenses to out-of-state entities to engage in that retail activity in the state of Vermont. It comes along with it some requirements. They have to report to us their sales, and they have to ensure certain regulatory requirements are met as they engage in that online direct-to-consumer shipment. In the sake of brevity, because I know we're short on time, I'm going to cut right to the chase with this report. We were able to attempt 116 purchases of beverage alcohol thanks to funding from the National Alcohol Beverage Control Association. Of those 116 attempts, 40 products were delivered to recipients within the state of Vermont. And as we drill down into those 40 received shipments, what I'll just say at the top of, blanket statement, none of the 40 shipments received were completely lawful shipments. Now, there are a number of myriad reasons why they were unlawful. It could be anything from the shipper did not report that sale into the state of Vermont. It could be that they didn't ask for ID at the point of delivery, and two of those shipments were actually delivered to a minor, and they received those products. So the takeaway for the department relative to this report is the department has some pretty serious regulatory concerns with this activity. Generally, what we have found is this is actually a complex compliance program to institute. It costs a significant amount of money. It involved us having to rent a rental location. So it was an unassuming location to receive deliveries. We had to post investigators at that location and wait for shipments to arrive. We had to arrange for minors to be present to receive those shipments to test their ability to decline a delivery to a minor. Additionally, this is a wide universe. And while we do license entities who engage in this sale, there are a large host of entities who will at least offer products for sale into the state of Vermont without holding a license. The web, the World Wide Web is just that, worldwide. It's a large universe, and it's historically very difficult to regulate and police. Happy to take any questions that the committee might have relative to this direct-to-consumer shipping pilot.
Well, I'd just like to know Skylar, when you talk about the cost of this for the 40 locations that were shipped, what was the cost of this project?
So we did receive, happy to answer. We did additionally receive a $50,000 grant from NABCA to engage in this this pilot program. In total, we spent $16,381 of that. I wish we would have been able to have a larger sample size, but again, this is resource intensive work. But the metrics that we use based on the dollars spent, the labor hours involved, it boils down to about $141.22 per attempted compliance check.
I'm happy to do that as a volunteer.
Yes, we will be looking at expanding this paradigm and finding efficiencies.
At Christmas, we got 2 shipments of wine, and that they're actually a pain if you're doing it legally, because if you're not there, it's a pain to get them. And so they were just feedback from us. They were good. They would not leave it. I had to be there to sign it. I had to show my face and my hair. They didn't have too many concerns, but it is, so from my point of view as a user, actually they've been pretty good. So I'm sorry that on the whole, it was not as strong as it should be.
One question I would ask is, were they a licensed entity to engage in that sale in Vermont, and did they report that shipment back for tax?
Yes, and that, of course, when FedEx delivers it to you, you have no idea. But you assume Wine.com is that compliance person. Company.
I'm thinking of another subject, which is flavored cigarettes.
Oh, yeah.
And if we are having difficulty regulating online shipping, I'm assuming.
Maybe we should transition to the tobacco
Tobacco compliance.
report, and I think we should hear, we as a committee did not take up the subject matter of S18 because we often get the bills when we end an illicit market and legalize a market, and we're doing the opposite now. And I think we need to be clear what you believe the effects of that will be.
Absolutely. After the tobacco compliance report, both Skylar and Charles can talk about the miscellaneous alcohol bill if you want, and S18. I have not been following it because I have the benefit of having very strong employees who are subject matter experts.
Manager and you can delegate.
That's right.
Now, let me have the last word after tobacco and sort of
Yes.
S18 it.
So I'll switch seats with
Or you can just pull up next to you, whatever you.
Okay,
Charles, could you just, yeah.
Do you want to move to the side and have it come
Oh,
up? That's
that's
fine.
like- and it's like-
Skylar is.
And
Skylar's there too,
Yeah,
yes.
Skylar is there to
Oh,
talk
okay.
about it as well.
For tobacco.
Now,
Yeah.
so Skylar's starting.
I am
Okay,
just.
tobacco.
First.
Thank
Got
you. Yes, absolutely. So let me just make sure everyone is aware that the report I'm going to speak about right now is a statutorily compelled report under Title VII, 1007B3. And again, this is limited only to brick and mortar tobacco establishments. That section of Title VII requires the department to engage in youth access minor compliance checks, where we send an employed minor into the store to attempt to purchase a tobacco product. And then we collect data relative to that attempt and take enforcement action when violations are observed. I'll cut right to the chase relative to this report, just to some numbers. I'm happy to report that our compliance rate for calendar year 2023 was 90.5%. We surveyed successfully 673 of our tobacco licenses. 64 of them sold a tobacco product to our employed minors. 609 of them refused that sale. I'm going to drill down a little bit into the sales because this does paint a picture to us. So of those sales, 28 of those clerks asked for the ID from the minor, while 36 did not ask for the ID and subsequently made the sale. The department puts a pretty strong emphasis on proper carding procedures, and we believe that the best stalwart and best protection that a licensee can have to refusing sales to minors is in fact asking for their ID. So that's a bit of an education focus for the department. One other data set I'm going to point to that we collect on is the efficacy of our training requirements. In order to sell tobacco products in the state of Vermont, you do have to be trained in some way as spelled out in Title VII. And the report breaks down efficacy of those training requirements. 100% of both our in-person seminars and third-party online trainers resulted in the refusal of sale. So the compliance rate is 100%. You get some descending rates as you move on to our online offerings. Then it is our in-house offerings, meaning the store trains their own employees at 90% compliance rate. And then no surprise here, if you are not trained, it's 71% compliance. So we do believe in training. We think that the data proves that effective training is another good protection for our retailers to ensure that sales to youth are not occurring within the state of Vermont. So with that, I'll certainly take any questions that the committee might have relative to this report.
Well, the online piece, so you teased it, the online piece, so did you also do any, how did you survey the online piece?
Yes, so in a partnership with the Attorney General's Office Consumer Protection Division, we have and funding through the Vermont Department of Health, we have engaged in some, it is by no means comprehensive, but we have engaged in some pilot compliance checking of online retailers selling tobacco into the state. Just so everyone's aware, online sale of tobacco products into the state of Vermont to include e-products, vape products, is illegal and has been for a couple of years now. Recent legislative sessions added the vaping products to the delivery sales ban. In partnership with the AG's office, we have engaged in some compliance checking of the online retail space. We have certainly found a good number of violations, and we have worked with the AG's office to pursue enforcement relative to that. And it has resulted to date close to $1 million in settled civil penalties for those retailers.
Did you, did someone in your office testify to Senate Health and Welfare about S18?
Last year, it was last
This year.
year. It must-
Skylar, you had added some input on S18, and then
You must have.
we also were asked to work on an amendment that I can speak to. We were requested by the mayor to just kind of provide some information on it,
An amendment on the House side or what?
on the House side,
Okay.
on S18, and it's relative to the conversation you're having right now.
Yeah, if you want to get in the witness chair quickly, and I think bottom line is we just want to know if you believe this will push.
Oh, yeah.
This will S18 will push people to engage in more illegal activity.
That's a good Skylar question. I want to stay within the confines of this. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
That's also.
Skylar, before we leave you then, that's kind of our bottom line is understanding better what we think will happen when we make these products illegal and people still want to use them.
What?
Well, what I can
illegal for anyone under
Under
21 to
21.
buy them.
Mhm.
I've never heard a complaint that we are lax in enforcing, those laws.
Right, but
So,
now it will be illegal for anyone over 21 to
yeah,
buy it.
so no one can buy it.
Yeah,
My question is, it won't stop. It hasn't stopped by saying you can't buy it until you're 21. It probably will force
Right.
more into underground.
Or to New Hampshire.
then are you talking to other
So
states?
let's, because we've, let's hear from Charles,
Or Skylar?
Skylar, or Charles, whoever's, I thought Charles was up for that.
Sure.
I can talk to this, because it's relative to the.
I think I'd like to hear Skylar's.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Skylar has
Enforcement.
data, he has data that he presented in the House and he can talk about the
Okay.
data.
Okay,
Is that the online compliance
just-
data?
let him,
That is the online compliance data. I think that what I would say is that we have strong evidence that the standing law prohibiting those online sales are currently being violated. We have a number of cases showing that our investigators are able to purchase particularly vaping products, even flavored vaping products online today, and that is currently illegal. So
that's not taxed.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
No one's collecting tax on that, on those illegal.
No, because,
Well, okay,
Correct.
so,
I don't know if I would posit, I don't quite have a crystal ball, and I couldn't testify before this committee to say, because we ban a flavor, it's going to result in X number of additional online sales. But I simply can state the data to say that we currently have an issue with illegal online sales occurring in the state of Vermont.
Senator Rock.
Can you tell us a little bit about what, if anything, is being done as a response vis-a-vis either the online sellers or the recipients?
Well, I can tell you the enforcement action that we've taken so far, if that's the crux of the question, or maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for, yes.
Okay, and I certainly don't want to speak for the AG's office, and that's why we partnered with them under this program. Under the consumer protection laws, the delivery sales ban has some civil relief that can be taken by the Attorney General's office. So when we identify a retailer who's engaged in online sales of vaping products, we send a co-signed cease and desist letter and request that they disclose to the Attorney General's office all sales that they have made into the state of Vermont since the delivery sales ban took effect. Based on that information, the AG's office makes determinations on appropriate enforcement mechanisms, and I can tell you that several cases, I don't have an exact number, the AGs would have to testify on that, but many of those cases have led to civil penalties that have totaled close to $1 million since we started this program in 2019.
Yeah.
Any of the cases, to the best of your knowledge, had any effect on the sellers?
We do recheck after the cease and desist letter has been sent. To this date, I don't think we've had any multiple offenses after they've received the letter from the AG's office and the Department of Liquor and Lottery ordering them to cease those unlawful sales into the state of Vermont.
Unless they're like other businesses that just pop up with another name.
But maybe
If it's
they actually are
profitable,
ceasing.
If it's profitable.
Yeah, good call.
We should probably hear about this amendment, that is
Yeah, I can do it.
relevant to our
30 seconds.
Did it pass?
It did, it was added to the bill for last week. So Charles Martin, DLL, for the record, Chair Marcotte was very interested in the online space, both tobacco and alcohol, so he asked DLL just for some information and construct an amendment to impact that topic. As Skylar mentioned, there are these periodic enforcement actions that we do with the Attorney General's office. This amendment would create a position at DLL that would exist full-time and work with the Attorney General's office to do online enforcement of both alcohol and tobacco. The position would be generated and funded through tobacco settlement money, and it would go away when penalties from the previous year were not greater than the cost of the position itself, which is actually kind of an interesting metric because it will indicate whether or not we're impacting the online space and discouraging people from allowing these transactions. So that's what we worked on the house, and that is currently in S18, as I understand it. So it would add some greater permanency to those online
But
appliances,
it has a budgetary impact.
kind of some of the monies. But it would not exist in a way that hurt the general fund in out years, which is generate money. And if it stopped generating more money than the cost of the position, the way the amendments written, the position, we would be compelled to come and ask for the position to be eliminated.
But if we're selling flavored tobacco vapes now, we are collecting tax. If we no longer sell them legally, we will not collect that tax. So there is a financial impact that way. Maybe not illegal online. Yet, we are gonna lose revenue.
And we're gonna lose revenue, but also hopefully save money, because we right now spend over $400 million on tobacco related illnesses and stuff. So I mean, I think it's, you know, we lose some revenue, but we also gain health, and we gain the state spending less money on people abusing their health. So-
I think we should return to this conversation this week if we can. I don't think this bill is moving on the floor this week.
No, it's
Well,
just
it's not even,
getting to
it's gotta be whether or not we concur with the House's amendment.
I
Right,
think that's what it's gonna be, that's all we're gonna be working
Or
on.
do it.
concurring.
And
That's, I believe, what the effort is.
Well, that's the effort. We could have further proposal of amendment if,
I think you need to speak to the president.
sure. But I mean, I'd like to better understand how
Sure.
other states have handled it that have banned flavored tobacco.
Just Massachusetts.
Is it just Massachusetts?
That's
Okay.
when I was on Health and Welfare
So-
2 years ago.
To be continued, I think that even whether or not we have the conversation is to be continued because we have to move on, but this is really helpful.
Yeah.
And we have to have you back anyway to talk about what's coming on alcohol and other items from the house. So we'll reschedule you all for another 45 minutes.
We look forward.
These two, not me.
Yes,
I'm gonna
sure.
go back. and-
We always love to see you, but
Yeah.
yes, that's totally fair. Great, so we'll work on that and thank you all for this great work.
And thank you so much. It's really interesting and. So thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see
And Wendy
you.
Brava.
I'm actually here for him, so.
Well, thanks.
Sorry.
Really, we exceeded.
I thought you were here for alcohol too.
Exceeded our revenue in the first 3 months of the year.
Yes, we
Bring
have.
samples during your next visit.
That's right.
I'll bring samples.
Yes.
Well, we have taste
We'll do
of,
Bloody
we have
Marys.
specialty tastes of Vermont coming up.
Oh, I
So
didn't
April
say
11th.
to attend that.
Or you've been able to taste it all.
I'll see you, okay, I'll see you.
Okay.
We look forward.
I'll socialize. I'll go for a social visit.
So I was just in Senate Natural Resources and now Senator right here.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same people.
Right, that's right.
No, you
You're the-
haven't,
you're the only-
I'm
you're
your
the
bright
only-
face from
I
something
know,
else.
you're the only new face in the room right now.
Yeah.
Or like, it's like a vaudeville show, which is kind of like.
So I asked Senator Bray, Chairman of Natural Resources, to come in on S-253, an act relating to building energy codes, because our committees have both been interested in how we balance meeting our climate goals and reducing people's, utility bills with how this impacts the cost of housing. So we're interested to hear what this bill does.
Sure. So thank you for the record, Secretary Frey, Addison County, Chair of Natural Resources and Energy. As you might recall, as part of our buddying up on S100 last year, we added a study, the energy codes.
Right.
I was gonna say for better or worse, but I think it's mostly for worse, that we've had the residential building energy standards since the 90s, but for many builders, this is news to them, such a thing exists in the residential sector. The commercial side, people are know this better understand that there is such a thing. So we just last year, in the findings we talked about, compliance rates, according to the Department of Public Service in residential building, we see a compliance rate with energy standards of roughly 54%, but there are reasons to think that even that is high. So the interest here is, as the chair has said, there's the economics of, sometimes we talk about PITI for owning a home. I always feel like it should be PITI plus E.
What's
energy.
PITI?
What are principal, interest, taxes, and insurance for carrying a mortgage? So add an E on the end for how much energy are you using, how much does it cost? We know that if you have an energy efficient home, there's an incremental cost up front, build it that way or remodel to that. But it always pays back. The question is how much over time. So there's an economic question that we don't really get into. We're just acknowledging that there's value there.
Maybe not in our lifetimes, but there's value there for someone over time.
I think it's always, well, unless you have a unhappy event in your lifetime, that you'll see a return on your life.
Yeah, it's gonna be,
For instance, there was
won't be enough.
Duncan Wisniewski, I don't know if you talked about Duncan or Mike Wisniewski, and they did a senior housing project, I think in Milton, something like 25, 30 units. The incremental cost over standard construction was 3%. But it's close to a net zero cost for residents and especially for seniors on a fixed income, having low energy costs. Also having your costs protected from market volatility.
Right.
Prior to the the Affordable Heat Act, there was a price spike in fossil fuels that was $700 million over higher cost
Right.
out of everyone's pocket. No questions asked by us, but people needed to spend that money to heat.
Would you say that from the committee and from your work on this, you get more savings for the upfront investment, the more units you have? I know O'Brien Brothers just did O'Brien Meadows and
I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some economies of scale.
Mhm.
I mean, for one thing, as soon as you start doing multiple units, many people now have interior walls. So only the people on the outside are the outside. When it's just your house, you have all the outside walls, and the ceiling. So certainly that way. For the committee, though, I would highly recommend this presentation. Richard Fazy gave it
Oh,
to
yeah.
us when we to reintroduce the bill to the committee. It's on our website. If I thought ahead, I would have run copies of it. So sorry about that. But it is,
So we get
so,
a copy.
yeah.
Oh, that'd be
different
great.
things. Well, and copies of the bill.
And the presenter was Richard Fazy.
Yeah.
Faesy, and it's
Coming in for a decade.
on February 29th. In case you're digging into our committee page to find it. Anyway, that's a great summary of what the Act 47 working group looked at. It came back with,
And you were on that group, right?
yes, and
Sure.
it came back, so it's a great summary. It's brief and it gets into, it lays, I think the rough way we looked at it as a work group was over an extended period of time, maybe 7 years, we might get to a fully fledged program that would promulgate the energy code, train people on the energy code, inspect when you're building things, certify that things are built to specification, and a fully fledged program. Right now, we don't have that. We have a very piecemeal program. So we decided to bite off only as much as we thought we could reasonably take on. And there are a series of recommendations there are many recommendations in the report. We just take on the first group. So it's, for instance, change the cycling. Right now it's mandatory. Every time they do energy code, we must write new rules. And at the moment, in Alpha, we very loud and clear for builders and architects that the current code is about to go into effect in July, pushes to a higher level performance. People are having trouble using the prior ones and building in a manner that I would say the key challenge is managing moisture level.
Yeah.
In walls.
Yeah.
The people are building tighter without getting
Yeah.
the moisture balance right.
You also
We have a
gotta check the radon, how do you make it, the more likely you are to have that. But didn't we have some really serious incidents of foam insulation?
Yes.
That was,
You saw it in
I've got one down here that was hit with the flood. People before them had put foam insulation when it ripped up like all the support beams are rotted because the foam insulation that was put back.
Right. You know, if you take a vegetable and then you wrap it tight with saran wrap and stick it in your fridge, that's probably about the best way to have it rot faster. You have to then have.
Yeah.
And foam, because of its, depends on the type of foam, but there are foams that do not have moisture. So you end up with moisture driving out generally a warm material with a full dry winter exterior. It gets to a point somewhere probably to that wall, if you're not managing, where it condenses out. And now you're starting to just add moisture slowly but surely to walls. So that was the concern. Anyway, that concern voiced by all those folks in Elkhart last summer was part of the reason that when we did the bill last year, we said, let's get involved and figure this out in a better way, help that code be useful. So the first thing in here says that the shall update is a may update. We don't want to push the code ahead of what people can actually do in the real world. It's not a cognitive dissonance, like why push when you can't already implement. The second thing is, we know there are a lot of things to do, cost, developing code, educating, training, inspecting, etc. So, we recreated this working group last year. It's an ongoing working group.
Oh, good idea.
It
Because
has,
we have also.
So it's like perpetual or does
yes,
that
well,
anything?
through 5 years.
Thank you.
Because there are, no surprise, complicated area. You have many, many interested parties.
Mhm.
And so the working group reflects a variety of interests to help us keep on making progress. I mean, I would say that was the shared outcome. We want to make modest progress this year with this bill. And we know we have more work to take on over time. The next thing is that one of the only ways we know who builders are is a number of years ago, we passed the registry for builders.
We did,
Yes.
finally, after
We have them coming in, we might push them to next year.
ages.
OPR, so.
Oh, tomorrow we have OPR coming in.
So OPR
Right.
has been a helpful and willing partner in this. Basically, they have a registry, and we want to improve the functionality of that registry. And they are agreeable to doing that. And that is really it, we improve the registry, we get a working group to keep us, help us keep going. We pause on pushing energy codes forward until we feel like we can responsibly push forward. And we keep working on the problem. And if you add for the pants estimate, I'd say it's gonna be a 5-7 year transition to what we might call a fully fledged rational program for energy. But the positive bottom line is, there's pocketbook savings when you're in a more efficient zone. There are energy, greenhouse gas emission savings on the environmental side. For builders who build code currently, it's having everyone build this code levels the playing field. Right now, there is unfortunately, my testimony, there are builders who say, I build the code because it's the law. I have competitors who are willing to not build the code. They can, no surprise, your bid, the builder wants to build the code. So from the business perspective, we want builders who are stepping up, not to be disadvantaged in the real world. And the last thing too is that biggest investment most people will ever make in their lifetime is a home.
Right.
And we have the opportunity to help people have a home that's well constructed to a code that ensures its long-term, not just the health of the home, like not having rotting walls. Indoor air quality is a big portion of what makes for a healthy home. So for instance, new codes are generally including things like continuous ventilation. To deal with the fact that they're getting tighter, you continuously ventilate, like this building is always wanting fresh air. We don't usually think of that in your home, say, oh, I want fresh air, you open a window. But that's a pretty drafty way where you use a lot of heat.
Oh, that,
There-
those of us who live in nineteenth century homes all appreciate the fact that we're naturally ventilated.
Yeah, exactly. The last,
18th century.
Yes, and eighteenth century homes too, you know, they were ahead of their time, you know, they understood this continuous ventilation issue.
They didn't have to pay for
my longest term home, when it snowed and blew from the north. When you opened the drapes in the morning, it was a little snowdrift on the inside on that window.
No, it's a hit.
So that was a continuously ventilated home as well. But when you're building tighter, so there are very energy efficient ways of just, you use a counter current system. So as you draw cold air in and you warm it with the air you're exhausting. Makes for fresh air with less heat loss. So that's where we can see things going, and we just wanna keep ourselves on the path of making progress.
Great.
And I should go back to my commitments. Theoretically, they started 4 minutes ago.
Okay,
Do you have any?
I do have a question, Senator Brock, yeah.
Want to go?
No, you can go first, yeah.
Based on energy codes that exist or energy codes in the past, have there been any unintended consequences discovered? For example, a code that said you should put foam in, not realizing that 10, 20, 30 years ahead, you would find that those are in fact harmful?
Great question. I don't know the history of earlier versions of the code, and if it ever recommended a technology that now we would say that was an oops, not a good idea. The term that comes up over and over again as you dig into this stuff is building science. And at first it sounds a little highfalutin, but there really is a science to managing vapor movement through a wall and stuff. What kind of, there are membranes you can put on the inside right under your sheetrock that are akin to Gore-Tex, they let moisture move one way but not the other. And so things are advancing. I don't doubt that there have been mistakes along the way.
Well, the thing that I'm really thinking about is the issue of liability. We're going after companies that made products that subsequently found to be harmful, and there's been a liability issue. What do you do if the state is the one that told you to do it, and then 15 years from now, you find it is causing cancer to your family?
I agree.
Who's responsible?
I don't know the answer to that question,
Well, I
but
think it's one that we ought to at least
yeah.
think through as we're passing legislation.
so for sure, and that was a question that came up from builders and realtors in the working group. Because, wait, I sold you this home, am I now liable? Or because the seller represented it in a certain way, is the seller, the former owner liable? Or was the builder liable because they built it? So,
Or was the manufacturer of the materials liable?
right,
So
so
did everybody do everything right except the state told us to do it, and we did it, and it's the state law.
Tell you to
Right.
build this.
So we
we
have to
don't, we
let,
don't have a tidy answer to that
Right.
question. But it was definitely part
Yes.
of what the working group looked at.
and why you want the working group to be on
To
top.
continue.
Exactly.
Why BEV, why do they have a special place among utilities? On the
Oh,
Burlington Electric,
Because they've run their own, they are an energy efficient utility.
oh, so efficient
Very
Vermont captures everybody else and BEV has a separate, okay. This seems pretty benign from my perspective,
I think it's
and
right.
helpful.
We hope it's more than benign.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean,
Or less, depending on how.
it sounds like the working group was very productive in the fact
It
that.
was.
I'm not a big fan of more House members and senators on working groups. It would just, we would wanna liaise, I think, more out of session with whoever serves, because it's likely to be someone from your committee, and we still wanna be paying attention to any conversations about home prices and, and we want to go in this direction.
Director DeRocher, fire safety,
Mhm.
was tasked with doing a report that looked at code,
Yes,
how it affects ice.
Wait,
yeah,
So his shop, this is yet
Yes.
another piece of this awkward puzzle.
right,
They do inspection for, all commercial.
Yeah.
And multi-units, and they license plumbers,
Mhm.
electricians, they look at fire code, they
For
do
equipment.
elevators.
yeah,
They do that kind of
Yeah.
safety stuff, but they don't do energy, which is sort of orphaned. And then here's the
Yes.
biggest odd thing for Vermont exceptionalism. We are the only state without a building code.
Right,
Right,
right.
right. We need a building code.
We're the choose your own adventure state.
Right.
Building.
No, well, we don't license contractors either. We're one of the only states in the country that doesn't
Yes,
license.
so this is why I say, a 5 to 7 year evolution
Yes,
to get to a more rational system.
yes.
That represents everyone's interests, addresses liability, helps us be rational, cost effective, and stop having the horror stories of someone, this phone seems like a good idea, and then they rot out their bill, which is a really challenging thing to replace, having
Well, and they,
worked on a job that did just that. It's not so easy to make a house go up.
Right.
Yeah.
I would wonder in the future if historic preservation should have representation in this group because we still feel that age
In and
old.
out.
Yeah,
We had a big working group. Mr. Brewer was there as a regular, but
Mhm.
he can maybe talk more about it, but it was honestly, the most productive
Right?
working group I've ever been on, because instead of, one of our challenges in here is you have testimony in sequence. You
Mhm.
hear something on day 7, and you wish that the person who said something on day 1 were still in the room.
Right, right.
So you can have that conversation. Well, this group had 20 people representing all things, and they were always there. So it was much more of a discussion group. We worked through an agenda each time, and we had a discussion with 20 people. Most people spoke at every meeting. So it's a very amiable group that got along well and did a ton of work. There is a long version of the report that this is extracted from.
Yeah.
It's probably more than you want to know.
Yeah,
But
but we could have Richard Fazian. I mean, I remember when he would come in about building ratings and things like.
this is, Richard is great on this. There's 1986, I got a 5-star energy rated home certificate that allowed us to have a higher mortgage rate, the higher percentage of income dedicated to servicing that mortgage, because the carrying costs energy wise in that home were lower. And the guy who signed that certificate in 1986 was Richard.
Oh, how
Amazing.
Oh, that's great.
So he has been in the business for a long time.
Thank you, Senator.
We should all
Thank you so much.
revisit Margaret Cheney's bill. Do you remember Margaret's bill
Yes,
many years
Richard
ago?
Fazy was the spokesperson for that, the building rating.
Yeah,
Good to see you
Good
all.
to see
See you
you.
after lunch.
Yeah, see you after lunch with our marathon bills. We can send the Department of Labor.
we're only gonna go for 2 hours.
Yeah.
God forbid the
Hopefully we
Senate
get
go
through a
all
number
night.
of bills. Can you tell them?
Labor is, it's important.
Okay. Okay, so committee, we will have to end this at 11 sharp because Prop 3 is our last hour. And we can't take any time away from that with a vote. So we have 35 minutes. And otherwise we lose our 10-minute break, so that's a decision. But let's start with Cameron in the witness chair, I suppose. They've left you that chair, so.
You want me in the.
In the musical chairs, you have landed as witness chair. And I'll just,
talk about it.
I'll just frame this up to say, there's some things that we want a general updates on. We have H66 sitting on our wall that may become a vehicle for some additional work on unemployment and workers' comp that we believe you've been talking to legal aid about up until now. I have it stuck in my mind that we had to wait until after March 1st to look at better wage data as we continue to look at our basic needs budget and our minimum wage. So whatever information you have there is helpful. Does anyone else have a subject they'd like us to make sure we include right now?
Just today's and future testimony, because I will have some stuff on future testimony.
Okay, I mean, is there anything that was really timely for today?
No,
Yeah, I thought we were getting an update from Matt. we haven't seen that for a long time, so that's great.
I can tee you up very quickly.
Yeah.
For the record, Cameron Wood, Policy and Legislative Affairs Director for the Department of Labor. On the UI piece, there are a few things that we would like to discuss with the committee and try to move forward this session. There are some things that we would like to have conversation and for your consideration in preparation for our modernization project. One of those topics in particular, we have been discussing with legal aid. I do need to circle back around to them. Was kind of waiting until after crossover when the
Yeah.
committee was gonna bring this topic up.
No,
So-
poor Wendy, I was like, it's not after crossover,
Yeah.
so please don't come back right now.
And so
But yeah.
I can retouch base with them. We were trying to come to a little bit of consensus on that particular item. And I think we've come to consensus on most of it. There is a very technical workers' comp bill that you have in your committee.
That's age 66.
I would have to double check.
Okay.
I think,
But there is one that came in, I don't think it's age 66, I think it was introduced this session. It is a, just a technical fix to last year's workers' comp bill. Where there was an incorrect citation to our rulemaking authority, and so
That's
we would.
extremely technical.
Exactly. Other than that, I don't think we have any other workers' comp pieces. I'll take a double check on 66. And then as far as the wages go, correct, Matt is here. We have testified in the past that, you know, one of the challenges we run into is the delay in information. So for example, we don't receive the fourth quarter wage data until January 31st, and then it takes us time to review that, clean that up, et cetera. So we typically will wait till after the first quarter to be able to come in and speak intelligently about things that happened in the prior year. I think Matt has some information to share, some information we can't necessarily share publicly just yet, but we can talk in generalities on
Yeah.
on
Okay.
items. So
Do you, while you're in the witness chair, do you all, is there any comment you have on bills coming to us from the House that it, you know, we should have flagged by you?
I don't think any of the minor, I don't wanna call them minor, I think everything is, has its own reasons and justifications for it. On some of the things that have come over, that have come out of like House General, for example, they're somewhat related to labor, but we don't enforce them, so we don't have a lot of comment on those items.
Okay.
There is a workforce governance bill, H 707, that is working its way through. That was our, primary, priority, if you will, for this session.
H707.
Yes, ma'am. That's the coming out of the SOCWED work with the workforce
That
governance.
sounds like our song.
Yes, so that's the primary thing
Okay.
coming over that we obviously would like the committee to take up and review.
Okay, and you are positive or neutral or? have
We're
concerns?
working towards positive.
Okay.
There are aspects of the bill that we are supportive of. There are a few aspects that we would like further consideration.
Okay.
But, and I know there are others that have
Yeah,
direction they would like to see, or conversation they would like that bill to discuss.
like we got these, or I got these,
Yes.
I think that's really great. It sounds
That's
like
bad.
your inclusion work is going well right now. It's if you identify as having a disability or some kind of drawback in your physical or mental health that's making it hard for you to work.
Is that your mailbox?
Yeah, I got one.
It should have gone, I believe they sent them out to all representatives and senators. If you did not get one, Senator Clark, we can make.
But that mail show was
and
in
make
here.
sure.
Someone gave it to,
Oh, someone.
they just gave me my second mail thing.
Oh, okay.
Check it.
I wasn't there 2 days ago, so.
No, I got it last week.
It's great work that we're doing.
Yes,
I
it
would,
is,
I would
right?
probably let the commissioner speak to that.
Yeah, well, why don't we let the commissioner wrap up with all the good news, things like that.
Oh, Matt has all the good.
Well, we love spending time with Matt on just data, whatever data we have, we'd like to see.
I will let the
Um,
commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ned. Right?
Welcome back to the world of,
Yes. Thank
and into the world of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We had one like within days.
yeah, we were like, we saw each other up there at 7, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
1 year. For the record, Matthew Gowitz, I'm the Director of the Economic and Labor Market Information Division at the Vermont Department of Labor. Came down with a little bit of sniffles last night, so out of abundance of, I just decided to wear this today. So,
Thank you for that.
so good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So we are the state partner to the federal government, specifically the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the production of economic data for the state of Vermont. One particular data product I think this committee has been interested in the past is wage data by occupation. And this data allows us to better understand not only what the average or the mean or the median, the 50th percentile is. This data also gets broken down into the 10th, the 25th, the 75th, and the 90th percentile. This can be really helpful for job seekers if you are trying to negotiate, like if you're an experienced person trying to negotiate a starting salary, coming in at the 75th percentile might be more appropriate. If you're entry level, coming in at the 25th percentile might be more helpful. My understanding is this committee's been interested in the $15 an hour as a kind of a guidepost to kind of guide our discussion.
Who's making less than $15 an hour?
Exactly. So annually, we do produce this information. It does come out with quite the lag. I think just as a little historical context, I did kind of look at the distribution of this wage data from 2004 forward. So I think what we've seen. So let's see how to tee this up. So if we're focused more on the lower paid occupations, right? So I want to focus on the 10th percentile. So we're kind of like saying, okay, how many people at that 10th percentile, 90% make more than this, 10% make less than this? Like for example,
Is the 10 percentile, like you were saying, there's assumptions about your skill level, is that somehow considered below entry level, like?
That's a great question. So as a proxy, they say the 25th percentile is like entry level, but people do sometimes earn less than that. And this is where it gets messy when like real world data, like we will have the owners of a business saying they make $14 an hour, right?
Yeah.
But they have a draw, they have, a profit sharing plan, they run all their expenses through the business, but they just pay themselves a wage. And so we have to say, is $14 an hour for a CEO, the appropriate, our business owner, general manager, we're always making those adjustments and having to work with our federal partners to ensure quality standards. That the data makes sense. That's something I talk about with my staff is like, we have to think about the position as an economic signal. What can people reasonably expect in an open competitive market to earn in this occupation? And being the owner is, you don't get hired at $14 an hour to be a general manager, right? So,
can you equate, to follow up on Keisha's question, can you equate the 25th and 10th percentile with a wage, with an
actual dollar?
Yes, with an actual dollar. And entry level, that's a interesting concept. I mean, entry level is like post college, post high school, post some kind of training, or just coming, what are the assumptions with entry levels, I guess my question.
Each occupation would be completely different, right? So if you are, like a cashier, for example, would have a low barrier to entry, no official requirements or trainings or certificates. And the entry level, maybe it's your first job, you have zero cashiering experience. However, an attorney, would have to also come in as an entry level. I have zero experience, I just graduated, I'm coming in. And then, so every occupation is a little different, and even the progression, how many years it takes to move you to experience, right? A carpenter level of experience will require a lot more than say like a cashier or a retail salesperson before you can, start advancing.
Thank you. And then there's market forces, obviously, that push up that entry level, and then that's when you get compression, and that's what we're seeing now, I believe.
Yeah.
So it would be helpful if we could have year to year trends, because my understanding is that the wages have increased since COVID. And so I would just really like to see that.
When could you bring us pretty graphs and charts?
The data has been submitted to Boston, and Boston is going to approve it. And so it could be within the next 24 to 48 hours that we would actually get it released.
Okay.
Why does Boston have to approve?
Boston Fed.
Yeah, they're our federal partners, and they have to ensure that we've applied appropriate suppressions. Some data is not releasable, and they have to just verify that we're going to be releasing the correct information.
Well, by the way, I heard that the Boston Fed chairwoman went to New Hampshire recently to talk about their workforce issues. And I emailed think Alex Farrell, or just to say like, I want her to visit Vermont. I think she's come sort of privately and met with
Which would be great.
staff, but I like a public conversation with the chairwoman.
No, that'd be great.
That'd be wonderful.
There's a big data users conference in Boston on May 17th. If people are interested, the Federal Reserve will be putting that on as well. Just a quick clarification in my shorthand, I say Boston. That's the Boston Regional Office of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, not the Federal Reserve. So
Okay.
just,
Oh, okay.
so the Bureau of Labor Statistics is reviewing to ensure we've applied all their
Okay.
techniques and methodology correctly before we release.
That's actually a good idea. Yeah,
A little double check.
yeah.
Yep.
It's free, hopefully.
And they pay us.
Okay, good. Do more.
So, I wanted to, in the economic storyline, I wanted to highlight, like, starting in about 2014 is where we started seeing wages really start rising, particularly for this 10th percentile. From 2014 on, coming out of the financial economic downturn of 2007, 8, 9, it was tough, 10, 11, 12, tough. By 14, we start seeing competitive labor pressure really start to rise. And then we see this 10th percentile rising by about 40 to 50 cents a year. And that takes us all the way to 2022. So to give you numbers, in 2014, we were talking about $9.75 an hour at the 10th percentile, meaning 10% of jobs in Vermont earn less than $9.75 in 2014. By 2022 is up to $14.20. However, what I can share, like, I feel comfortable sharing this top line information. It's about to be published. I've got an approval often. The 2023 data shows a $1 increase. So we went from increasing 40, 50 cents in that 10th percentile going to 14.22. But now statewide, $15.22 is the estimated 10th percentile for all jobs.
Okay.
So
$15.22.
Yep.
Do we ever adjust that? Inflation has also been going up, so to get real wage increase, we do that.
we don't do it in this data, no. So each data is just point in time that year's estimate. So we study about 300,000 paid jobs in this program. So if at that 10%, if it wasn't even $15, which it's not, at $15.22, it would be about 30,000 jobs is what this is estimating.
Okay.
However, and which is a big decrease since where we were in these conversations, because I think why you're interested in hearing me is I was talking that we were seeing trends in the marketplace that weren't bearing out in the data just yet, particularly around service staff.
Right.
Right, and we still think that there are some issues working through it on some of those lower pay positions. But for the most part, we're seeing, the means and medians jump up. For example, wait staff, though they might have a 10th percentile, $14.80 or thereabouts, their mean and median is now $29.
Okay.
So like 50% of people are making at least $29, if not more, as a wait staff.
Okay.
And so we're seeing that bear out a lot of big numbers for wait staff in the last couple of years. I think everyone has kind of seen how the restaurant industry has changed when you go out these days. So I was just wanted to at least start there in broad terms. When you look at the individual occupations and say, okay, at the 10th percentile, who is under $15 an hour at the 10th percentile? Again, I focused on the ones that at least had 1,000 jobs in it.
Okay, that's helpful.
So we're not talking about massage therapists with 120 of them.
Yeah.
We're talking about, and there's 18 occupations, and if you don't mind, people indulge me, I would just read those.
That sounds great, yeah. I'm
Because
not
they'll
gonna
give
try
you
to
a
write it all
flavor.
down, but if we have those on
Do
our
you have-
website, I think
yeah.
that'd be great.
And I
Can you
can-
send that?
I will make this available once it's published.
Right, that's
Yeah.
right. Yes, that's okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna.
And I can highlight this,
Yeah.
but yeah. So this will give you a flavor of where we're at. So again, these are just occupations of at least 1,000.
People
Right.
participating.
Right. So at the 10th percentile, we're talking at least 100 jobs.
Okay.
Right, and this could be, well, we'll just leave that. So home health and personal care aides, that's number one. We see that one quite regularly as being low. And if you're interested in how high it gets or how low it gets, but right now, just
Yeah.
focus on that.
We have them in specifically to say they make less than $15 an hour a lot of times. So that's.
Yeah, and that bears out. They are, if
Yeah.
you just rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're like the 7th lowest paid education, pretty much. They're all about. So anyway, home health their home health and personal care aides. Receptionists and information clerks. These are, they're not, don't think of them as receptionists, like a person doing administrative assistant work. Think of the people who sit at the desk and, you check in at the information clerk, oh, it's down the hall on the left.
Okay.
Bartenders, which I think there's still some problems in that occupation. It's a rare day that you see someone making $14 an hour as a bartender.
Right.
Can't imagine that that's the case.
Right, and I think this is that tip issue
The
that we.
tip issue is huge.
Yeah.
So bartenders, that's a little bit.
They do very well on tips.
Light truck drivers, so those are the people keeping it local, doesn't
Okay.
require a commercial driver's license.
Okay.
Like the auto parts people, like
Yeah.
those cars that are zipping around.
Huh.
Waiters and waitresses, which we talked about, even though it is at about 1372 at the 10th percentile. The 25th percentile gets up to 16,
Okay.
and then the 28th.
And so with
above.
bartenders and wait staff, that's not including tips.
It's supposed to be,
It's supposed to be.
right, and we're always working through to try and include that and
Okay.
correct that.
It's what they report as tips.
Got it. Yeah.
Right, it's what's, yes, that's recorded.
But as they get to the high end, you can see $38, $46 an hour, that's what.
Yes.
So cashiers. And then we're gonna see a group of these that are like that, cashiers, fast food workers, retail salespeople, food batch makers. That is someone, if you are in a manufacturing operation and say you're making cheese, you might just be as part of like running a machine that's just running this. And again, this is just the 10th percentile. Maids and house cleaners and housekeeping cleaners, excuse me, fast food cooks, dishwashers, self-enrichment teachers, which I think is just a problem in the way the data is calculated. Those are people who, yoga
Oh,
instructors,
okay, yeah.
self-enrichment, they provide courses for training in something that's not occupationally related, horseback riding.
Okay.
And I just think that 10th percentile is a little funky.
Mm.
Stockers and order fillers, janitors and cleaners, laborers and freight, people who move things by hand. Food preparation workers, again, that's gonna be more of your fast food restaurants, and then miscellaneous assemblers and fabricators. So those are people who work in production that would support as a team, putting things together,
Mhm.
working multiple parts or machinery and equipment.
Okay.
So those are the 18.
Okay.
Those are the big 18. As I said, there is another of
Are agricultural workers, would they be considered in this bucket or?
no.
Okay.
Because they don't, a lot of times agricultural workers don't fall under unemployment insurance laws, so we
Okay.
don't actually survey them to collect their
That was the
information.
surprise for me, not hearing that, but that now makes sense. When they have some kind of additional benefits, like you look at McDonald's and it's like you also get an education stipend or something. That's not included at all. This is just if they have a wage, no benefits.
Correct.
So there's huge difference there.
I
Yeah,
I watched the McDonald's sign and $15 an hour seems to be,
yeah, it's like 18, I think, in Chittenden County.
for Chittenden County.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their job is hard, so I support that.
Yeah, fast-paced.
Except we need to get them into L&A training first.
Right, yes.
That's a big challenge.
Yes, so. Did you, I would imagine. The negotiated contract with the environmental service workers at UVM Medical, probably our biggest employer in the state. That ensured everyone was earning $20 an hour or more, might have contributed to the dollar jump.
Mhm.
I don't know if
That's
that's,
possible.
I mean, cause that's the biggest employer in the state. People were making $15, $16 an hour in environmental services who are now making base of 20, so. I would imagine just that union negotiation brought wages up,
That's interesting.
probably double what they would have been. I mean, you're the data person, but I mean, that seems to be a huge
Hmm.
sea change, given that that was probably the largest group of workers who could have received a single pay increase of that nature.
Yeah, I'm not familiar on the timeline of when that would have been in play, and it'd be interesting to see, because we survey employers about once every 3 years. So it's possible, like, if we haven't collected their information and,
Yeah.
because it takes 3 years to put these estimates
Oh,
together.
okay. I believe it was Q3 of last year.
Oh, okay, so.
I only know that because I talked about my experience giving birth in the hospital, and that was April, so
Oh, you're right.
I think it was this summer.
Yep, yeah. Can you believe April?
What?
Can you believe how long April?
We have a first birthday party coming
Yeah,
up as
just
you do.
passed so quickly.
Yeah,
So
it really
quickly.
does, it really does. That's
They
all.
will learn the word no.
Oh, she goes like this, and I'm like, yes. I mean, I think that we probably have just a few more minutes with Matt before we turn to Commissioner Harrington. While we're transitioning, I have told this to our federal delegation, and we're working on getting a witness from the American Immigration Council.
Okay.
Just from a general labor perspective right now, I really feel like states need to start looking at immigration issues separately from the federal government, helping people gain some kind of legitimacy that allows them to pay taxes and get a baseline here. I'm trying to study what any other state might be doing that's legal for them to do absent federal action. Because we're in many contexts at the end of the line of a labor market that is, if I'm gonna say in Vermont too, but in most places, if you're getting your roof done right away, if you have workers who are available in a timely manner, it's likely because you have an immigrant labor force and you have housing for them. So, I just think we have to look at, as the Economic Development Committee, how we help those people move out of the shadows and gain some sense of legitimacy if the federal government is not going to do that. So I just want to put that out there. It's probably a commissioner question, but in case there's any data that we can ever pull, we need to start looking at states at the workforce and immigration.
And a lot of it would be training. I mean, for a while, a lot of nurses that came over from Bosnia and from Philippines, but they came with training. We updated it to our standards. I don't know that the immigrants we're getting now are coming with those professional standards. So the question is, how do we recruit and train them in
Right.
the positions that we need?
Right.
Nursing definitely is one.
The issue also is, are they in the United States legally? Now, we just passed a bill that dealt with the notion of providing some subsidy, but it was for only those people who were in the US legally, not for people who were here illegally. And I think that is a very slippery slope to get into in contrary to federal law.
I would not do anything contrary to federal law in this area, but I think more and more states are trying to get creative about how to help people become taxpayers and have a safe experience while they're contributing to our workforce. And I don't think we can ignore that, because I
Well,
think,
we have people right now who are here illegally who are taxpayers. Now, whether they're valid taxpayers or not, the workers, for example, in the dairy industry typically are filling out forms, with social security numbers that are false, that are people either dead or other people, and they are paying taxes, although they typically are paying the minimum amount of taxes that they can. That's a
so,
common existence right now in Vermont.
And we I remember trying to get Medicaid during COVID, and they're paying the taxes in, but they don't get any benefit out because they are not legal, so they don't have a social security. And,
Yeah, that's
but
correct.
our dairy industry, we go down the other.
Right. construction as well. This is why it's hard to talk about, but I think whatever states are doing to have a legitimizing conversation in this regard, I think we have to pay attention to, with our demographic problem and with our general workforce problem. So,
Old immigrants, just new ones.
I mean, I don't,
No, that's our demographic.
you
What are we
know,
on to? Oh, our age?
many of them are sending money back home to
Oh,
people of other demographics, but most of them coming here are trying to join the workforce. And I think anything we can do to allow that legitimately and not fly in the face of federal law, I think we need to start hearing for it more heavily. So that's a bit of an aside, but I think data in that regard could be really helpful. So that's my last comment question to you, and we can have the commissioner address that a little bit in the last 9 minutes that we have. Any other questions for Matt?
Oh, thousands, but we'll wait for.
I know, I
final
do think
report.
when we have you all back in, did you have a date that you felt like you would have actual year-to-year comparative data that ends with 2023?
The federal government is required to publish this themselves by April 8th.
Okay.
But we've asked for, we've already submitted our request to have ours released as soon as they approve it. So
Okay,
I don't know how long Boston is gonna take to review and approve, but I would expect within the next 24 to 48 hours. And then I will be able to spend a little bit more time with the data,
That's great.
actually you know.
Senator
So either way, if they have us in 2 weeks.
Exactly,
Yeah,
that should be
you'll-
clear.
yeah.
Okay.
I'd be interested at some point to see the wage compared to inflation. I think I was disturbed many years ago to hear the one pro-business thing that Vermont had was we had a good workforce that worked cheap. And I'd like to see those wages come up to make sure we're competitive.
Mm.
Because
So
we already
comparative.
have lots of taxes.
Okay. Some light touch on comparator in England or.
Sure.
Oh, that would be, or at least in our surrounding states.
Yeah.
And do we ever get shared data with Quebec? Which is quite honestly also a competitor, I mean, in terms.
It's hard to move the workforce nimbly between the two. But
But our economic development, we have quite a bit of, we have a lot, and they're our biggest trade partner, but that we're constantly looking at bringing businesses and having a US arm here.
Oh, you mean just comparing wage data, not
Yes.
labor movement and it, like not workers going
Correct.
there.
Right, their,
Okay.
their wages are higher, the taxes are 50%.
Right, yeah, it's a little hard to compare,
Very
yeah,
different system.
right, right, but it is, yeah. Okay, well, let's get the commissioner in the chair, but thank you, Matt.
Good morning, everyone. For the record, Michael Harrington, Commissioner, Department of Labor. I think I'd just start by commending everybody on this committee for all your hard work on the housing bill, work around housing. Obviously, it's interesting as we talk about workforce and Vermont's labor force. And what are the things that drive our labor force, and quite often, they are actually not things that have to do with the Department of Labor. The things that really move our labor force are things like educational opportunities, childcare, housing, and again, so those things are just equally as critical when we talk
Quality of
about
life.
quality of life. They are either equal to growing the workforce, but they can also detract from the workforce if they're not sufficient enough. And so, thank you for your work on that. I appreciated your comments too about there are many different monikers depending on the status of somebody, but I'll just use a general New American term. And states are looking at different ways that they can impact by either bringing in more new Americans, but also how do we get them into jobs faster? One of the biggest hurdles is the speed at which the federal government works to get everybody the correct social security number and other documentation they need to work. And so that can actually take quite a bit of time. Maine has pressed the federal government a couple different times now to expedite that process. And we are also looking at sharing in that push to get people the documentation and the status they need to begin work sooner.
Yeah. Senator Parkman.
I was on a UN panel about women in Vermont on Monday night, and I was with Tato, who is very involved with the African, the new African community here in Vermont. Well, now not so new. They've been many of them have been here quite a while. But she and I talked about our need to continue to make it easier for professionals who are credentialed in another country to come to this state. And this is one thing this committee and our Senate GovOps committee can do with working with OPR and other licensing authorities here in the state, is to make it easier for people who come with professions who are trained maybe slightly differently, but to translate that training and those educational experiences into a green light for them to practice here in Vermont. And we need to do this because we need people in almost all those professions. And so we would have, I don't know what we could do in addition. I mean, maybe starting with OPR, which is where we have started in the past. That's still a good place, but I think that's a big push and a big interest of mine, is to get people who who are already trained, actively engaged in our workforce, so
Absolutely.
that's just reminded of that on Monday night.
Do you have anything you would add about bills coming to us or?
The biggest, the unemployment insurance piece,
Yeah.
I think is a multi-year process for us as we begin to reimagine what UI looks like with a new modern system. So I know we've got some items that have moved to the front of the line that Cameron was talking about. And then I think just over the years as we're modernizing, we'll have different things that come forward. To look at, again, one of the pieces we're doing as part of that modernization is also evaluating our business practices and processes to make sure the way the program is administered is the most efficient and effective way. And there may be a policy or legislative change needed for some of that. So, you know, DMV did something similar as they were modernizing their system. So again, as those items come up, we'll be sure to bring them to the committee.
Is that mostly being handled through appropriation, so I don't think there's a bill at the moment on that. That's
On the
mostly
UI
all-
piece?
No, on your modernization,
So-
that's pretty much all continued through the budget, right?
Correct, and all that money has been appropriated to date. There are different checkpoints we have before the Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee, JICA. So we just met with them at the start of this session for them to approve the next batch of funds. But we are quickly moving towards the end of our contract negotiation process. So, you know, we've gone now back and forth with the vendor many different times. And I think we're drawing to a hopeful close on that contract so we can begin work.
And how is our mainframe doing?
It's always a challenge.
Yeah.
And you know, we recognize that. You know, I think we are doing things behind the scenes that help to stabilize the system, further protect Vermonters and Vermont's data, and to strengthen the system, so that you know, whether that's moving it to like an offsite facility where it is on servers that are newer and have the most up-to-date protection mechanisms, or we're upgrading like logins and credentialing. So, you know, the way you used to log into the claimant portal was pretty rudimentary. So we've also been able to implement things that have like multi-factor authentication, right? So you log in and it sends you a PIN, and now you use that one-time PIN to access the system, things of that nature. So there are bumps in the road, as there are with anything, and we're trying to keep kind of there's 3 main systems, 4 main systems that we operate as part of unemployment insurance. And so trying to keep those plates spinning is the challenge, but we've got a good IT team. We just did upgrades to the claim portal to help secure and strengthen that system because we were seeing regular images. So we're hopeful there. And as part of that process, and reimagining the UI system from a business perspective, we're also looking at, the senator had brought up a good point around contingency planning. So part of that process will also be around contingency planning, and actually having it. That's not to say we don't have plans, but they've been developed at different times over the years for different types of scenarios. So I think updating and having one core continuity of operations plan related to UI is the ultimate goal.
Great, thank you. Wow.
So we have, we're developing the RFP now. We kind of have to time it so when, because we also have to know the system that we're building on, the vendor we're using. So my hope is that we're actually using a consultant that will be embedded with the team, that will work with the team throughout the modernization process. When we're talking about business processes, my goal would be that the contingency piece is actually on the front end of that. So it would be in the sooner part. So if we are able to kick off the project in the next 90 days, then we would hopefully have a vendor that can start that contingency work.
So we have the workers' comp technical change bill. We have H66 that we can look at the UI discussions that are happening and modernization.
66 is pay penalty, but 55 is the UI.
Oh, it is? Okay, thank you for
Yeah.
correcting me.
So H55 is UI.
55, that's what I meant. 55, kids, you were looking at something.
55, a great year to have been born.
Yeah. H 707, we'll
Yeah.
wait for, so we'll probably try to schedule you back in the next
That'd be
week or two. So we can start making moves on these items, and hopefully we'll have 707 around that time and better data, and we appreciate all your work.
Perfect. I was just gonna mention real quick, you held up that flyer from the Vermont.
Yeah, I love it. You have a
fine.
copy.
We will make sure you get copies. So it's actually a partnership we have.
Yeah.
The state received a grant and we sub-award that grant out as part of the application process to Dartmouth Hitchcock, the University of Pittsburgh, and some other consultants that do most of this work, but it is about linking individuals with injuries with providers and also employers to get people back to work as quickly as possible. So the idea, I think we all agree that if you have meaningful employment and an employer that is willing to be flexible and work with you and whatever injury you're trying to recover from, we can get you back to work sooner. That does great things for someone's physical and mental.
Absolutely.
The only thing this doesn't have is a time frame. So it doesn't say, contact us if you want to participate in this study.
People can continue this conversation
What's the time?
offline.
Ongoing.
We are going to take a very brief
Yep.
break and come back at 11:10. We appreciate the
Thank you so much.
for being
Yeah.
here and being partner with
Yeah.
us. Professor Finken, thank you so much for joining us. We're taking a very brief break, and then we'll start with you at 11:10 our time, which I don't know what is going, 10 your time.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
great.
Yes, we appreciate